Okay, so I'm going to give everyone a few more minutes to sign in. It is now 3:35, so we'll give a few more minutes. We had roughly about 20 to 30 people register for today's session. So we just want to give everyone time. I know that it's a lot of people getting out of school, traveling home, but welcome. My name is Christine Passarelli. I am the Vice President of Advocacy for this term for New York State TESOL. And I have some members here from our Advocacy Committee here to welcome you all. And we're going to be getting started shortly.
I'm interested as well if people are able to share, what their role is. If you are an ENL or ESOL teacher, SL teacher, that's probably that's probably a lot of us. But if not, if you're an administrator or a classroom teacher or counselor, feel free to share that. And I'd love to also hear grade levels. So, people who are interested, are you here for what reason? So yeah, put a little bit of that in the chat so we know what everyone, why you're interested in this topic for advocacy.
That's great, Ben. We're curious. Some of us here, so for me, I teach. I'll get into that when I give my quick little bio, but I teach elementary, and I also am just really becoming more involved with learning about the graduation requirements. And I've always had in the back of my mind what happens to them when they leave us.
Hi, Funky. Okay. What did Daddy say?
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
So couple high school, couple elementary. I think we're coming from a few different backgrounds. So that's great. All right. Should I go to the next slide?
Yeah, Shauna, we'll get started, and then people will catch up as they come in. I'll be continuing to let them in.
Cool.
Okay, so again, welcome. This is our first session from the New York State TESOL Advocacy Committee. My name is Christine Passarelli. I am the current VP of Advocacy for our organization. We have a full team of members that come from across the city and the state. So I am currently an ENL teacher for grades 4 and 5 in Staten Island, New York, so New York City division. I have been an ENL educator for the past 17 years, but I've been teaching for a total of 20. I love my students. I love where I am working. And I'm very, very interested to see and find out what's going to be happening with the New York State graduation requirements. We have Susan LaFond, who's not here with us today. She also is statewide advocacy, and she is working for New York State United Teachers. We have Colette Ferrone Goodwin, who will be joining us shortly, and she's also statewide advocacy. And Colette is a member of one of our RBURNs. We have JP Gerald, who is a statewide advocacy member, and also, I'm not sure if he still is, but he was teaching adult education for language learners, and he is he's a member of the anti-racist division. We have Lisa Frisha, who is also a New York City educator, Staten Island, New York. And she's here today. Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'll just say hello and good afternoon, everyone. We're real excited to learn together about this topic. Like Christine said, I'm especially excited because I want to see what happens to our ELLs after they leave our elementary school and beyond. Thank you.
Okay, and then we have Jasmine Bird, who also is statewide advocacy, and she couldn't be here today. She was teaching New York City division, but I think that she has changed her role for this school year. And we have Bridget Pitarelli, who will be joining us around 4 o'clock, statewide advocacy. She is teaching in the, I believe, upstate region. I should know this, but I've forgotten.
Syracuse area, I
She's
think.
in Syracuse. Yes, thank you. And we have Adriana DeCipio, who will also introduce herself, also New York City division.
Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for coming. My name is Adriana DeCipio. I am a longtime ENL teacher in New York City Public Schools. This year, grades 3, 4, and 5, a member of the advocacy team. And I am also here because now that I'm aware of this issue, I'm wondering, you know, what happens, like others have said, to our kids when they leave us. How many have graduated? I don't have access to that data. So welcome.
Okay, great.
Okay, so this is our advocacy committee, and we are very, no, it's fine. We're very happy to have you here. And if you are interested in joining our team, we're always welcoming new members. Also, check out the New York State TESOL organization website. We'll give you more information at the end. And there's lots of special interest groups and committees that you can join when you're interested. We have a very special guest presenting with us here today. Shauna Sweet is from the Greece School District. She is our current president-elect for New York State TESOL. So that means that this year she is shadowing our current president, Ms. Christine Seaback. And then in November, when we host our annual conference, we will pass the baton over to her, and she will be our president for the 2024 year. She's very well-versed in the graduation requirements for high school in New York State. She is the current assistant director for world languages for the Greece Central School District, just outside of Rochester, New York. And within this role, she supervises ENL, world languages, bilingual education, exchange students, interpretation and translation services for 18 different schools. She's currently serving on the New York State Ed World Language Content Advisory Panel, the Seal of Biliteracy Task Force, and the ELL Graduation Task Force. So, well, like I said, she shares a wealth of knowledge, and we're very honored to have her here supporting us today to support us in sharing this information with all of you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And I should probably add too that I was formerly an Arborn specialist. So I worked with Midwest Arborn, which is kind of how I got so versed in the graduation requirements. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so before Shauna starts unpacking and just giving us a breakdown of what the graduation requirements are like, I wanted to do a quick little icebreaker. So I found this quote that really resonated with me, and what I would like for everyone to do is I'm going to read it out loud, and I want you to just take a minute to think what comes to mind when you hear this quote. Type your response in the chat, but don't hit enter or send until I say go, and then we'll have all the responses come in at the same time. Teachers need to give encouragement and praise for what ELLs can do instead of dwelling on all that they can't yet do by providing frequent opportunities for their success. So take a minute and think, how does this relate to our topic of the day? How does this relate to your everyday experiences? Type those thoughts and ideas in the chat. And when I say go, we'll all see our responses together.
Need to get encouragement, praise for what?
Okay, and I think that everyone's had enough time, so we're going to get ready to hit send in 3, 2, 1, go.
Would you like me to read
Yeah.
some of what I'm seeing?
Yeah.
Okay. So someone is saying, Elizabeth says that it relates to ELL graduation because students see the requirements as something daunting and unattainable. But if we encourage them, we celebrate successes as they continue to grow. Let's look at their assets. They bring so much to the table. We need equity for their assessments and educational opportunities. One-shot deals do not help ELLs. Let's acknowledge their assets, what they bring to the table. They need encouragement to build self-confidence. Let's celebrate them. I'm kind of like rushing through this, but you get the idea. If they're constantly reminded that they're not good at something, they will without question not like it. So true.
Wow.
Celebrate little successes. They put in double the work. Thank you for saying that, Nicole. They absolutely do. They work twice as hard as others, but often produce half the results. And then they're unmotivated. They have a wealth of experiences that may not be recognized in the classroom. Let's look for other types of knowledge. Thank you for sharing, everyone.
Thank you. I love all of these insights. It's very heartening to know that so many of us are on the same page.
Absolutely. Want to go to the next slide or?
Yes, next slide. Okay, so now this is where Shauna comes in. So we're going to share with you the current graduation requirements for New York State high school students. And if you click on the link that we're providing you, you'll see it's going to direct you to the New York State Education website. And there's multiple links within the page. So Shauna is going to walk us through how to navigate through the New York State Ed webpage so that you can become more familiar with the graduation requirements.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And there are a ton of documents on here. First I want to ask though, if it's okay, in the chat, if we could give like a number 1 through 5, right? Like how familiar are you with the graduation requirement? So 0, maybe you have no idea. 2 or 3, maybe you know a little bit, or 5, I know a lot. So I'm just curious about how you rate your knowledge level, so I know how deep to get.
Seeing some 3s and 4s, a 0, 3s and 4s, 4.5.
All right. All right. So a couple on each side and a lot in the middle. Great. Okay. All right. That's helpful for me. Thank you. The one thing that I'm going to start with, I believe if I click on this, and again, there's a lot of websites on here, and I may refer to what's on the slides. But one thing that I did happen to mention to Christine is the colors. So this is something that it actually took me a couple of years to catch on. That whenever the graduation rates, it's a little fun fact, fun secret that it took me, I didn't even realize, whenever they update the graduation requirements, they change the color of the document. So for this one currently right here, you can see it says updated June 2022. So I think everyone's looking at that, right? The purple one. And so that's the newest one. Right here on my desk, I actually have this one, which is brown. This is the one that was just before the 2022. It's from 2021. So it's just a little tidbit, so you know, oh, the purple one's the newest color. So it's something that helps me. I really connect with color a lot, and it helps keep me organized. So the first thing that we'll mention is just that there are two different requirements for graduation in New York State. And the one thing that I'll say right off the bat is that for ELLs, the graduation requirements are exactly the same as other students. So I'll say that again, the graduation requirements for ELLs are exactly the same as other students. So anything that applies to, any student, who's not an ELL or doesn't have an IEP, the same is for ELLs. There's one significant difference for ELLs, and I'll get into that with the with an appeal, but mostly like, you know, by and large, it's all the same. So the first thing is the credit requirements. So focusing on the credit requirements, you know, all students are required to have 22 credits to graduate. And of course, these are the minimum. There are often students who, you know, earn credits above and beyond the 22. But at minimum, students need 4 credits of English, 4 credits of social studies, and the credits of social studies are very specific in terms of you know, how they're divided up. So they need to have 2 credits of global history and geography, 1 US history, and then the half participation in government and economics. So these might be flashbacks for some of you from high school, thinking about certain teachers you might have had or certain classes. A lot of that hasn't really changed. Science is 3 science, where you are required to have 1 life science, which is usually, you know, we knew it as biology, at least when I was in high school. I had Miss Francione. I don't know about you, Ben, but I had Miss Francione. And then there's physical science. So for a lot of students, that's earth science. And then they need an additional credit that could be a life science or a physical science. Sometimes there's different electives in there that they can take, but they need to have, you know, at least 1 from each category. And then there's math. So 3 credits of math. And that could be, you know, there's usually a certain sequence that students take it in, but there isn't any particular course requirements for math. The 1 credit for world languages. And so world languages is, you know, any course that's offered in school. However, and I can get into more specifics if you're not familiar, but students are able to earn world language credit for attending school in a country where they're educated in another language. And the important thing to know about that is it's based on age level. So if students are in school in another country at the age of 10 or older, then they automatically earn credit for world languages. So that's pretty cool. So it depends on how old they were when they moved from that country to the United States. So that does apply for a lot of our ELLs who come in 5th grade and beyond. If not, all students are required to earn 1 credit for world languages, including ELLs. And then again, there's 1, and like I said, save your questions if you have any. There's 1 credit for visual arts, music, dance. So arts is 1 credit. 2 credits for physical education, PE, gym, should be each semester. A half credit for health, and 3.5 credits for electives. And electives could be anything from business classes, additional science and math classes, world languages, if they earned extra credits because they came from another country, those could be applied to electives, and standalone ENL also counts as elective. So 3.5 credits of elective is what they need at the minimum. Besides that, you know, there are, and I won't focus too much on a lot of this, but there are a few things, you know, here and there that apply to specific people, but there's pathways. So students, you know, should be completing different pathways. So for example, you know, they would need to, it's kind of like a concentration, I think about, right? Like they can get a concentration in something. That's what the pathways are. So they could do a CTE program, they could do a business program, they could do, you know, and it's kind of like that advanced studies or a major. So students typically all fall in that category one way or another after completing their courses. And there's some appeals, which is, you know, a lot of them that includes ELLs, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But, you know, I'm not going to focus too much on everything on this side, but we can get into some of that perhaps if you have some questions. Because I wanted to go over to the assessment. So besides credit, which is the first part, the first requirement, then all students are required to pass a certain amount of Regents exams. So on this side, as you can see, it's typically 5 Regents exams per student. So all students are required to pass the English Language Arts exam, which typically happens in 11th grade. 1 Math Regents exam, 1 Science Regents exam, and 1 Social Studies Regents exam. So again, the math could be algebra, it could be geometry, as long as they pass 1. For science, it could be living environment, earth science, chemistry. Social studies, you know, could be the US history or global studies, but they have to pass at least 1. And then the 5th Regents exam now is called a pathway. And essentially that means that students actually have some type of choice in whatever the 5th exam will be. So in terms of the pathways, there are a few different options. But for these exams, like it says the 1 additional Regents exam. So that could be like an additional science exam or an additional social studies exam. There's actually pathways for different things, like for arts, for career and tech ed. And then there's a pathway for world languages, which is pretty great for our ELLs. I can share that with you in just a minute when we look at the website. But does anybody have questions about anything I've said so far? Any specific questions? Yeah, I know ELA is the common factor. Yeah. ELA is a pretty big barrier for a lot of our ELLs. Any questions off anything I said so far? I just don't want to go too fast because I know it can be a lot.
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah.
Are the math Regents available in different languages? Can they take it in their
Yes.
language, like in
Yes.
elementary school? Okay.
So yep, all well, and I shouldn't say all, actually a lot of them are. It's kind of what I refer to as the gatekeeper exams. So the algebra and you know, the living environment, the lower level exams are all available in a variety of languages. They actually just added Arabic onto that list. So that's a newer language that's being offered. And I can actually tell you exactly where to get that list. And it's updated regularly, but it's in the school administrator's manual for the Regents exams, and it changes from year to year. So I can't tell you off the top of my head, but what I can say is not every exam is available in a variety of languages. There's certain exams and it's only certain languages. And I believe in the summer administration, I don't believe there are any languages, or maybe just Spanish. I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, you really do have to check because it varies from exam to exam, from administration to administration, depending on if it's January, June, or August, and it varies by language as well. That's a good question. But if it's not available in their language, you know, like all testing accommodations for ELLs, they can have oral interpretation. So
There's a question from Thomas in
Yes.
the chat for you.
all right.
He says, I'm confused about the pathway exam. My school requires Global 10 and US history. I never heard of a pathway. When did this happen?
Yeah. So what I can say is that
Mhm.
a lot of schools are still encouraging, students take the exams as part of the course. So, students do they typically take the exam. All students really do take, as you can see from the credits, they are required to take global, and they're required to take the course of US history, and the exams usually align with that. So again, this is the minimum graduation requirements. And, I do believe that not a lot of schools, we want to encourage all of our students to take the Regents exams, and to take the exams that are aligned with the course. So I certainly don't think anyone would say, "Oh, you don't need that test." Don't worry about it too much. I think it's just common practice that the exam goes along with the course. So again, remember these are the minimum. Somebody did just, what was the question? I just said I would pull something up too. Yeah, the pathway exams. Okay, let me pull that up if people aren't sure.
Mhm.
So I'm clicking on the link that says multiple pathways. And I really like this visual because it shows you, again, the minimum requirements. And actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this in the chat, and we do have a lot of these links, including this one in the slides, but I'm just going to put this one directly in the chat. Because, if you're familiar with the NYS website, you probably know that there's a lot there. So
Mhm.
sometimes it's hard to find exactly what you're looking for. But so for the multiple pathways, yeah, it's broken down just like so. So ELA, math, science, social studies in the pathway. So again, for the arts pathway, there are very specific exams that can be used. Career and tech ed programs have a pathway. There's all different pathways here. What I wanted to take a look at was the world languages pathway. And what I'll say is, if you don't know about this, it's because it's very new. And it's also very new to have these approved assessments. So I'm going to share this a little bit, and then we'll go back to the slides to make sure I'm not missing anything. But for any students, the department approved pathway and world language assessment, if a student takes one of these assessments and scores at, a level that the state indicates is the appropriate level, then that can be one of their exams. So if you take a look, for example, at Arabic, here's an assessment. There's the ActiFL assessment called the Apple, which actually we're administering right now in our district. So if a student attains this level of novice high in the Apple, that's an approved pathway assessment that they can use as a Regents. Same thing, there's an Avant assessment. It's called the Stamp 4S. And if you're not familiar with these assessments, your Auburn folks can certainly help you, but they're fairly easy to administer. Most of them are done virtually. So again, there's a whole variety of languages for the pathway, and this is new. And the reason, because there's new world language standards. So the new world language standards, once they were approved by the Board of Regents, we are able to add these additional tests and align them with the new standards. And there are new exams being added all the time. So the state is actively looking for more exams and more languages. So keep checking this. If you check it out now and you're wondering next year, oh, are there any other languages? Definitely come back and check it out, because there are a lot of language tests out there, and the state is trying to approve them to give equity, to make sure that we have as many tests for students available as possible. So I'm going to go back to the slides. Like I said, we did go over this, and we're looking at the purple, which is the most updated. We took a look at this chart, and took a look at the different combinations of pathways. And then, This is, if you're probably all familiar with the ENL units of study. And as I had mentioned, some things that are important to know on here, especially for high school students, is the credits. So how do credits align with students for graduation for ENL? So anytime students are in standalone ENL, that can count as elective credits. So they would get, those 3.5 credits they need for elective, that could be counting for their standalone. And then integrated ENL, those courses count for the content area credit. So if it's integrated ENL, ELA, that's done by a co-taught or a duly certified teacher, then that would be an ELA credit towards graduation. And that's the same for other content areas. So I'm just checking to see if there are any questions here. Yes, yes, all students need the ELA regions, even if they take the world language pathway. The world language pathway is like that 5th exam. So yes, all students will take the ELA regions. That's a requirement for all. Okay. All right, so I think that's it, unless we have any specifics. And I know we're going to do some breakout rooms, and if you have any super specific questions, I could do my best to answer them at the end. But I think we'll go to breakout rooms, and then if any questions come up, you just write them down. All right, Christine, take it away.
Okay, so we just had some people who joined in. So if you are just getting in now, welcome. We did just finish reviewing what the current graduation requirements are. So what we're going to do is sending everyone off to random breakout rooms. And I want you to just think about these 2 questions. So what stands out to you about the current requirements? And do you feel that they are attainable for our multilingual learners? So I'm going to send you off into your breakout rooms, and everyone is going to have 5 minutes to chat it up with your groups. Let me see. Everybody, okay. So breakout rooms right here. And so we're about 14 people. So I will make 4 breakout rooms. Okay. So get ready. Here we go. Elizabeth, are you okay? Do you need help joining the breakout room? Hi, welcome. I'm glad you're joining us. We just sent everybody off into breakout rooms. So I don't know if you want to go off into a room or if you want to just wait here a few minutes.
Yeah, I'll go to a room. Yes, thank you.
Okay,
Sorry I'm late.
No problem. No worries. Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. They're just discussing the review that they just did of the graduation requirements,
Okay.
and if they think that they're attainable.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to assign you to a room right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay.
trying to think. Oh, like I took extra art classes and like, I'm just trying to think of like how they could get something like that. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, like it was an option when I was in high school too to either do regents or non-regents. You didn't have to take the regents exams to get a diploma. So, I mean, I've heard rumors that it's going back, like they could be going in that direction again. And that would be really helpful
Well,
for the
even
ELLs.
like, even all these assessments, we differentiate all year long and do small group and everything. And then at the end, guess what? They're all taking the same test. So it's really, not fair to them.
I just wanted to pop in really quick. Hi, guys. Do you feel like you had enough time to talk, or? Yeah. Lydia, what you were just saying, it's interesting. So the Regents exams are required by everyone, but I believe, and we can ask Shauna about this, you can attain a certificate, a graduation diploma without passing all of the Regents, I believe. I'm not sure, but there's a Regents diploma, and then you get a general diploma, right? That's what you're talking about. And I'm going to
I
share.
don't think I don't think they can get it even a diploma. Like the non-regents diploma would be if they got like a 55.
A 55, right? So they still have to take them. Right. Yeah. So they're still being forced to take them. Yeah. It's just something that's so interesting, and I'll share more about it when we go back to the whole group. But if you're following the news, and if you ever follow like Chalkbeat, there's a lot of articles. An article just came up in my newsfeed yesterday about the talk and all of the excitement around the potential changing of the requirements, and whether or not the Regents are either going to be modified or completely taken away. So it's very interesting.
Yes, I'm excited to hear more about that.
I can imagine. Okay, so I'm going to leave the room, and I'm going to send everybody back to the whole group now. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Okay, so I see everyone slowly coming back into the whole group. And we'll give Shauna a minute to come back in and continue sharing her screen. After I split to the becomes, I had to switch. No worries, Elizabeth. Let's see, I had to switch out of the app into the browser version. No worries. Okay, Shauna, are you able to bring the slides back up?
Oh,
For
sure.
every
Sorry,
single
I
grade and
forgot
every
about
single.
that.
Where are the? Okay.
Sorry, hold on one second. Can you even hear me right now? Am I muted? No.
No, we hear you.
No,
Sorry,
you're
I was adding a link because we just had a discussion in our breakout room. So I was adding a link to the slides so everyone can have access to it. So there we go. All right. Do you want to, there we go.
Okay, so just very quickly, because I don't want us to run out of time, but I don't want anyone to feel rushed. Does anyone feel they want to share out what was discussed in their breakout room, either in the chat, or you can unmute yourselves and just give a quick shout out of what was going on?
I don't want to dominate the conversation. I do want to hear from other people, but I realized one thing that came up in our discussion, and I forgot to mention this. It's very important about the appeal for ELLs. So I was like, oh, talking about the credits, and I'll get to that when we talk about exams. But the only difference for ELL graduation, which was all the way on the left of all the way on the left of this chart, is that ELLs can, they're able to appeal, which means they get a lower diploma, if they are able to achieve a 55 on the ELA Regents exam. So they have to get a 55 or above, but they also have to prove that they've taken the test more than once, and that they have to be getting AIS, which is Academic Intervention Services. And the state at first also had an attendance requirement on that to prove that they've attended school, but then they got rid of that because it wasn't equitable for ELLs. But so that's the only difference, is the 55, which is all the way there in the right column. So I feel remiss if I didn't mention that. So thanks.
Anyone else? I saw that Lisa put in there that newcomer ELLs should have a different set of requirements or pathways. So, I mean, we do know that all newcomers for 1 year or less are exempt from taking exams as far as ELA, and I believe the ELA Regents. So that would mean that they would really have to enter during their senior year of high school.
They still need the ELA Regents to graduate.
Even if they're a newcomer, like if they're less than 1 year in their
Yep. So students, and this
Yeah.
is a rule for all of New York State, not just for ELLs, but students who enter as 11th graders are exempt from, I believe, one social studies exam.
Okay.
And students who enter as 12th graders are exempt from like a social studies and a science, or it could be in reverse. But yeah, but that's all students, not just ELLs. So that doesn't have anything in newcomers. But all students, regardless of what grade level they enter, have to pass the ELA Regents or get the 55. So it doesn't matter if they're newcomers in 12th grade.
Wow. So that's something that, see, even I didn't know, because I live in elementary world. So for us, we know that when our English language learners arrive, if they're here a year or less, during the time of the state exams, they're exempt from taking the ELA exam, and then they will take the content exams in their native language if it's available. So, and you're just reminding me that, if I remember now correctly, that the documentation does say for the ELA grades 3 to 8.
Yeah.
Right. So, we'll move on to the next slide. So here is a slide, and if someone can drop the PDF again into the chat for anyone who got kicked out and needs to still get them or just came on. So this is a slide that has hyperlinked multiple resources for you to navigate through to help you make sense of when you go to the New York State website, that these are the most often hit hyperlinks that will be useful for you as educators to support your students and their families. So the first one, Shona will click on it, is all of the translated resources. So Shona, you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yep. So this is, I believe, exactly what we just looked at, but translated into different languages. So, you know, the same documents that we just accessed, but available in different languages. And then there is this is a longer version that really gets into some of the details, and those are translated as well. So that's pretty text heavy, but it's there as a resource for your students and families.
Okay.
The next one is a tracking tool, which I believe this is also, okay, this also comes translated, but it could be very helpful because you could take a look at the different credits. And I think visually this document is really a lot easier for people to be able to look at and kind of figure out what they need. And I believe if we go back to, there's a page with family resources. I think that tracking tool is found on there. My computer's a little slow today, so loading. Yeah, or maybe it's the state website, who knows? Maybe it's slow because it's ELA testing day, who knows?
Could be, could be.
Okay, so yeah, so if you take a look at the tracking tool, that is right here. And then I think, like I said, the tracking tool, yep. So the tracking tool is available in all these languages. So that's just another resource that's there where if you have a family, a Korean family, then they could check out that and fill it out in Korean. So that's pretty cool. And then additionally, there are other family resources as well. And a lot of those are on here, like these current diploma requirements. I mean, I know we looked at that purple one, which is the most current, but this is the one that I actually give out to my parents because it's way easier to understand, even for us as educators. Like I kind of wish we would have started with this as a scaffold. Oh, the page isn't working. Hold on.
There it goes.
I'm gonna blame it on the testing, who knows? There we go. So this one actually is just visually a lot nicer to look at, where this side has the credits, and this side has the exams, and then it has the pathway information on the back, and the different diploma types, like advanced diploma, regents, what's the difference with all of those. So that's there under these current diploma requirements under the family resources, and they have translated versions of those as well. So again, just wanting people to know that these resources exist. And then another one that a lot of people don't know about is an individualized graduation plan template for ELLs, which is a tool. There's a whole ELL graduation toolkit. I could always provide more information about that if you're interested, but it gets into like the research around graduation, preventing dropout, all of that good stuff. And this is actually a tool that you can use to make a plan with each student. It's kind of like, a mini, just like a mini, I don't want to say an IEP, but it's like an IEP type document. Like it's individual and, it's for really to create a whole school approach to support the ELLs. So that's another resource. And then we're going to talk about the thought exchange after. I'm certain these NYS fact sheets were shared by Susan LaFond. So again, probably another resource. It might be my computer that's slow. I can't blame the state because I'm going to a different website and I'm not going to blame state ed for this one.
Shauna, can I interrupt you a second?
Yeah.
There. Before we move on, there's a question about how in 10th grade ELL can obtain 4 English credits.
A 10th grade ELL?
Yeah, how can it in the chat? How can a 10th grade ELL obtain 4 English credits if they arrive?
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good question. So one thing we didn't get into, but I love that we're talking about these things because we can always make them follow-up sessions. There's transfer credits. So students, most of them, if they come from the United States, they would transfer credits from, another school. But even students from other countries, if they attended school, the courses that they took in their previous country may transfer over. So sometimes, like if you have a student who comes from Texas, they're probably taking English and they'll have a credit to transfer over. That's not the case for all of our ELLs. So oftentimes they do have credits that transfer over. And again, that could be a whole other session. But a lot of times it's transfer credits. Yeah. Oh, great. So here's the fact sheets from NYS. So even on the multiple pathways. So that's very helpful. And then the other thing I just wanted to share, oops, and I just added this and then I'll stop
Okay.
talking. Oh, I put it in the chat. I don't know why it's not working when I click
Supporting
on
all
it.
students.
But we got into a discussion in our breakout group about career and tech ed, CTE. And it's if you click on that link, which I might have actually let's see, there's a document about career and tech ed for ELLs, and it was based off of a presentation that I did with Tanya Rosado Behringer. So it's really good information. So if you have any schools that are pushing back on, you know, ELLs being in CTE, there's a whole section in this resource that has a lot of different tips and you know, a lot of good information about supporting ELLs in career and tech ed, because, you know, we also, schools are required to provide equitable access to education and programs. So again, these are just tidbits of information, but we are very happy to follow up if there's anything that you feel really passionately about. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, there was also a quick question about, can FELS take ENL as one of their, I think, electives? But I don't,
Former ELLs?
yeah. Yeah, can FELS take ENL as an elective? I don't believe,
Probably, because they're still required to have it 90 minutes of minimum as ENL services. And if they're in a standalone, it would count as elective credit. So yeah.
right, so, but a former L would not be entitled to standalone because of their proficiency level, like they're commanding, right? And it
Well,
would
they
have to,
could be though. They
They
could
could.
be.
and standalone, and would they have to be a former L within the last 2 years? What if they are
Yeah.
a former L who tested out in, like, let's say 6th grade?
Yeah, I mean, then they wouldn't be required to have ENL
That's what I'm
services like
saying.
on the purple chart. So I would say
Yeah.
probably not. And just to be clear, in the state, former ELLs, that definition is ELLs, you know, within 2 years. So beyond that, they're called ELLs. So when you say former ELLs, I'm thinking it's within those 2 years where they're still required to have a half unit of study, in which case it could be a standalone and they could get credit.
Oh, got it. Could be.
Yeah, I know.
I've
So,
always been told otherwise.
well, in different schools have different policies, but
True.
this
It's
is what the regulations would say.
yeah. So this is such great information, and I hope everyone who is attending is really feeling more empowered and knowledgeable of the information that we're setting forth, and being able to then navigate your way through doing more thumbing through the website and the documents on your own time. So yes, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be uploaded. I believe I have to share it with someone else, and then they will upload it to the New York State TESOL website. So you will have access to the recorded session. We've been dropping in the chat the PDF of the slides so that you have access to all of this great information. And if there's any additional questions, I'll be sharing my email at the end of the session so that you can always message me and request more information, and I'll get it to you. And if I don't know the answer, I definitely have plenty of people in my community that I can tap into, like Shauna, who can give us the answers. So that being said, along with sharing the graduation requirements, one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this is because New York State has put together what's called the Blue Ribbon Committee, and they are looking very closely and having discussions throughout the school year about the current graduation requirements. There's a lot of hype and a lot of conversation going on across the state and the Board of Regents about whether or not the New York State current graduation requirements are going to stay as is, or are they going to possibly make changes? And as I had said earlier to someone else, if you ever see articles from Chalkbeat, I just recently had an article pop up in my newsfeed yesterday that was talking about exactly this, that there's a lot of conversation around the graduation requirements and how New York State is one of the very few states left still requiring Regents exams, and what are the actual benefits, if any, of the requirement of these exams for students as they're getting ready to graduate high school and move on to additional secondary education. So with that, when the advocacy committee came together for this year, one of the big topics we started with was the current graduation requirements, and being that some of us are we're all on different levels in our educational careers and paths. As I had mentioned earlier, myself, I'm elementary, so I never really looked too much at the graduation requirements, but now I've been looking at them more and really becoming more familiar and versed with them, the same way that I have been with CR Part 154 and how that applies to my teaching and my students. So we found it very important to tap into our members and other educators and say, hey, how many of you are really familiar with the graduation requirements for New York State? And if you are, if you aren't, you know, why are you not? And then also looking at, if you are, do you feel that they're fair and equitable? Do you feel that there's enough opportunities for ELLs to succeed and graduate? One of the other big things that's come up is that during the pandemic, during COVID-19, during the 2020 and the 2021 academic school years, the graduation requirements, the Regents exams were lifted, and we saw a dramatic increase in the rate of ELL students and bilingual students who have graduated and not had that barrier in place from them being able to attain graduation from high school. So that is key. I actually just had a student who came back to visit who is now going to be an educator herself in a few years. And she shared that she graduated in 2021 and she didn't have to worry about the Regents because they were removed from that school year. Through our survey, I'm just going to quickly now share our results. So the majority of the people who participated in our survey are secondary level high school educators. We did have several middle school educators, some elementary, 2 early childhood, and 2 post-secondary higher ed educators. When polled and asked if you are familiar with the New York State high school diploma credential requirements, 53% did say that they agreed that they were familiar, and 41% said that they strongly agreed. So we had a very high rate of knowledge in participation with this survey, and we had just a very small amount that felt that they weren't very familiar. Of those polled, the current graduation requirements are fair and equitable. 42.6% of the participants strongly disagreed with this statement. 41% disagreed, and then we have 7.7% who agreed and said, yes, they feel that the current graduation requirements are fair and equitable. So it's very telling that the majority of our respondents felt that something needs to change. Again, when polled and asked whether or not there are a range of fair and equitable pathways for all students to attain the New York State high school's diploma requirement, and an overwhelming amount of 51% of participants disagreed with this statement. And then we had 17% who strongly disagreed, almost 18%. And we had 12.8% who agreed with the statement that there is a fair range, and 17, almost 18% that said that they were neutral, so they neither agreed nor disagreed. When polled and asked whether or not New York State Ed should consider alternate assessments in addition to the use of the Regents exams, and we have to very carefully, you know, shape this question to say in addition to, because the Regents exams are here. We don't know if they're going to be, you know, leaving us or if they're going to be changed, but they have been around for a very long time, and they are one of our measurements for academic achievement. So we would like to see alternate assessments in addition to them for meeting the high school requirements, and an overwhelming 70, almost 72% strongly agreed with this statement, and 20% 20.5% agreed.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And so then regarding the students who have been directly supported by educators participating in the poll, would you say that they've been adequately prepared to graduate high school on a typical timeline, meaning that they had no additional or holdover years of schooling? So we know that a lot of times ELLs, MLLs come into our school system, and what happens? We find that their education in their home country doesn't necessarily match up with us, and parents oftentimes can opt to put their child one grade level behind instead of placing them based on their age. Parents do have the right to make that request. And so that's what that means when they say no additional years or holdover years where we as educators have retained them. So from that, you can see there that we have 51.3% saying no, they're not adequately prepared, and then 46.2%, sorry, so that they were somewhat adequately prepared. So we really need to look at these numbers and consider what is going on with our education system and what can we do to make changes. So that was the majority of our poll. Also, I'd just like to add it and put here in the slides, but when we gave people open-ended questions and allowed them to just freely share what are their thoughts on what changes can be made, what can we do, there was an overwhelming amount of responses that said the English Regents exam is the #1 barrier preventing our multilingual learners from graduating. There was an overwhelming response that more support needs to be put in throughout their education. So we as ENL educators, if we're in that line, know that we're only with our students for a small portion of the day. We don't follow them into every single subject. And so we need to find more ways to ensure that they're getting equitable access to support throughout all of their subjects, throughout the entire school day, and throughout all of their education. And then, of course, as is always a big topic is, more teacher training, more Common Branch, general education, content teachers receiving training and information on how to support multilingual learners in the classroom. So just some final takeaways. Take a moment to think of all that has been discussed today and try to think what was the most surprising for you. And what actions can you take today to advocate for change? So I also did put here for a Q&A if anyone wants to share any of their final takeaways in the chat, or you can kind of keep them to yourself and share them with us later on, either through email.
Yeah, and if there's anything that you want to follow up on, we're going to continue these discussions with NYS TESOL. So if there's anything that we didn't get to or we didn't spend enough time on, you can send me an email. My email is on the NYS TESOL website. You can email Christine. Tell your advocacy group what you want to focus on. And we have one more area of advocacy today, right?
Yes.
So you want me to share this, Christine?
Yes.
If you're not familiar, so there is a Blue Ribbon Commission, and if you want to talk about that, that would be another topic that we could get into later on. But so the Board of Regents is looking at the requirements for graduation, and so there is a thought exchange, which is just a simple platform online for you to be able to put in some of your thoughts. And today is the last day for this round of the thought exchange, and I don't even think we planned it, but if you're interested in actually sharing your ideas directly with the Blue Ribbon Commission, that's a great way to do it, and you can do it today. I don't know if it'll cut off at midnight. I have no idea, but we just encourage you to spend a few minutes taking away some of the things from our discussion and sharing them with NYSED. And then finally, I did want to share, this is a blog post on the NYS TESOL blog, which is Barriers to ELL Graduation, and it's a summary of an event that I hosted with a bunch of different stakeholders. We shared a lot of data and actually, heard from some ELLs. We had a member of the Board of Regents on, and we just had a community discussion. So you're welcome to check out the blog post. There's some videos on there to give you some good ideas of the needs. So feel free to check that out. Let us know if you have any questions. Yeah, anything else? Did we put the thought exchange in the chat? All right.
Somebody can drop that in the chat.
And please feel free to tweet anything that you learned or any ideas today. And is Bridget still on? Our social media manager will retweet you.
I'm here. I will take, oh, I wish I took pictures.
Yeah, I got a couple.
Okay, send them to me. I love it.
Okay, great. So again, thank you all for your active participation and joining us today. This is, again, I just can't say it enough how important this topic has become for me and for many who were unaware of, how much our ELLs are impacted by the regulations for graduation. And if I can share my thought, as I'm thinking about this question of what we can do to advocate for our students, is the biggest thing is having knowledge. And so making sure that we as educators are doing our due diligence to make sure that if we are not knowing information, that we can find the resources, look for them, tap out people who have that knowledge, and become familiar ourselves. Because when we're familiar and we know what the protocols are, we know what the requirements are, we know what's expected, we can then share that information and advocate more strongly and effectively for our learners, because we know what they need the most. Again, so thank you all so much for coming. On this last slide, I did put my email, so you can reach me at vpadvocacy@nystesol.org. I did drop Shauna's president-elect email in the chat. I apologize, I should have put that in the slides.
Okay.
We have our social media links, so please join us and follow us on our socials. And if you are not a member and you found out about us through social media and you want to join NYS TESOL, you can click on our website. We have new rates going this year. So if you're a student, you're going to be able to join for free. Retirees and part-time employees have a special rate. And then current educators have a very low cost rate of $40 for the year. It's a really great resource. There's lots of information and lots of resources that NYS TESOL provides to members and educators. And so we're so happy that you're here and that you hopefully become a member of our community. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's important work.
I'm going to
All
stop
right.
the recording.